Whatever you have here is unholy and must be destroyed.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kenny. This is another one that's a bit shorter. It's just going to be me today, but don't worry. 1 week from now, on next Saturday, me and Stefan are going to release an episode on Heaven's Gate. It's going to be a big episode. It's going to be very exciting. Today is going to be exciting as well, but before we get into that, if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel, liking this video, it will really help us out if you want to. And also, we set up a new Patreon. It's going to be in the description below, so go there. It's only $3 a month. We'll release episodes early, and we will also do new content, or extra content rather, maybe 2 or 3 times a month. Starting next Saturday will be some extra content. It's going to be really cool. Me and Stefan talking about some stuff that you don't normally get to see on this channel. So all very exciting stuff. Like I said, welcome back. Today's episode's very exciting. It's something I haven't seen too many people do on YouTube. There's a bunch of information out there, but not a ton of videos on YouTube about this, just a few of them. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Our story starts on June 20th, 1953. Stella Darlene Nolan was an 8-year-old girl who lived at a trailer park in Compton, California. Every day, Stella would go with her mother to work at a refreshment stand. Stella's mother, Eileen Nolan, was used to Stella reporting to her every hour to make sure everything was okay. But at the hour of 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. on June 20th, Stella never showed up. Stella was a well-behaved child for the most part and did a good job on checking in with her mother every hour. So when she did not show up, this had her mother very worried and suspicious. Eileen reported her daughter missing that night, and over the next few days, Stella would never show up, and this forced the parents to reveal a secret. Stella was adopted, except she was never legally adopted. They had had custody of Stella since birth, but they never legally adopted her. The cops found Stella's biological mother in Texas. Her name was Betty Jean, and they were able to clear her from being involved with Stella's disappearance. 3 years later, and 30 miles away from where Stella disappeared, Brenda Joel Howell, 12 years old, and Donald Lee Baker, 15 years old, went missing together on August 6, 1956. They were 2 friends that had decided to go on a bike ride that night near the San Gabriel Canyon area, but little did they know they would never be seen again. Actually, they weren't only friends, but Donald was Brenda's brother-in-law. Brenda had been visiting her sister at the time, and police initially thought that the two possibly ran off together for some reason. Donald's jacket would be found 3 days later, as well as Brenda's bike. Little did investigators know at this point, Stella's disappearance and Brenda and Donald's disappearance would all be related. On November 26, 1968, a full 12 years after the disappearance of Brenda and Donald, a 16-year-old boy named Gary Roche would be shot to death in his home. Honestly, there's not a ton of information about Gary Roche's death, but we would later find out that the killer went into the home with the supposed intention of sexually assaulting Gary's younger sister. We can assume that things went wrong and Gary was killed because he was trying to protect his sister. Again, I've tried to find a lot of more information about this, and I just can't. There's some things in articles about Gary Roche's death that have to do with this case as a whole, but I can't find a ton of information specifically about his death. But again, it's a little bit more simple. It seems like someone broke into the house, again, to sexually assault his younger sister, and while he was protecting his younger sister, he was shot to death. Only about a month later in Sylmar, California, which is about 5 miles away from the house in Granada Hills where Gary was killed, a 15-year-old boy named Roger Dale Madison would go missing. Roger had gotten into an argument with his father after his father had caught him smoking, and this made Roger get on his motorcycle and drive off. He was never heard from again. 5 months later, on May 16, 1969, 13-year-old Donald Todd would go missing. Again, there's not a ton of information I can find on this case. It seems like he was last seen on the day in question, May 16th, riding his bike near a construction site in Pacoima, California. Authorities found Donald's body 2 days later under a road bridge in Granada Hills, the city where Gary Roche was killed. He was sexually molested and shot once in the back to kill him. On March 5th, 1970, 3 children went missing from their home in Sylmar, California. Also, Sylmar, I think it's Sylmar. I apologize if I've said this incorrectly. I believe it's Sylmar, California. If I'm wrong, let me know. 3 girls, 2 of the sisters were able to escape and claimed that they had been kidnapped. After the girls escaped, this prompted a man to do something. The day after the kidnappings took place, Mack Ray Edwards went to the police station and he surrendered. After he surrendered, he confessed to kidnapping the 3 sisters with the help of a 15-year-old accomplice. And then he continued to confess to 6 additional killings in the area. He took the police to where the 3rd sister was being held, and she was found unharmed. Mack Ray Edwards was born in 1919 in Arkansas. He moved to the LA area in 1941 and for the most part was able to keep under the radar. He only had 1 minor arrest before confessing. It was for vagrancy. He was able to find work as a heavy equipment operator for a company that was building the freeways in Los Angeles. So by 1970, he had been doing this kind of work for decades, and he was the definition of a blue-collar working man with a wife and 2 kids. And no one had suspected that over the course of 16 years, Edwards had been killing, sexually assaulting children in his spare time. And when he went to the police office that day to confess, he met with homicide detectives who were just mind blown listening to his whole story. He started with the first, Stella Nolan. He led police to where he had dumped Stella's body all the years before. He told police that he had kidnapped Stella, sexually assaulted her, and then strangled her to death. He then threw her body off of a bridge. The next day, Edwards came back to where Stella's body was found, and found out that she was actually still alive. She had crawled 100 feet along the ground, just trying to survive. When Edwards got there, she had sat up and he stabbed her to death before burying her in a grave beneath the freeway he was going to construct. And this is the saddest part of the story, in my opinion. The whole story is very sad, but it really shows how much of just garbage human being that Edwards really was. Stella was still alive whenever he left him, and she was alive for at least a day after he had strangled her, and she was just trying to survive. She crawled 100 feet along the ground, just trying to survive. And, maybe she thought she was, and in that time she was probably thinking about her parents and going back home, and she was only 8 years old. It's very sad. And he killed her, so. They were able to find Stella's remains after they were unearthed from an 8-foot grave. Edwards told police that Roger Madison had been underneath Ventura Freeway, but they were not going to tear up the freeway to find his body. Edwards took the officers to the San Gabriel Mountains on March 7th, 1970, in search of 2 victims, but they were not able to find them. Again, Edwards had a 12-year gap in between murders, and he would tell police that he was able to hold off the sexual urges to kill during this time. And, speaking of that, he had been motivated by these sexual urges after all. And, he says during this 12-year gap in time, he was able to use some other type of source to get his thrill on. However, the police were not buying this. They believed that he was killing during this whole 12-year period. And in fact, they would say that his body count could have been upwards of 22 children in total. Now, I think they're looking at a bunch of different kids who they believe, who went missing and were never found, who sort of make, they can apply to this case. They can apply to Mack Ray Edwards because it all fits his MO. And so, they don't have necessarily proof to say that he killed 22 children, but based on that, they say the body count may be up there and that, to that number. Edwards' response to this, he just responded by saying he only killed 6. However, during his stay in prison, he would be very inconsistent about the exact number he killed. At first, it was only 6, but it said that he claimed up to 18 and or 20 at different times to different people. So it's kind of hard to know exactly how many children he killed. But it's interesting that we can say that the kidnappings really forced him to, once the 2 girls escaped, they saw what he looked like, what's he going to do? It seems like that really forced him to go confess. But he says it was he said he had a guilt complex, and he actually told police the day he confessed that he was just feeling really, really guilty about everything he had been doing. and that he knew it was bad, and he just couldn't control his sexual urges. So, you know, I have a hard time believing, though, that if those two girls didn't escape and he was able to kill all three of them, he probably wouldn't have turned himself in, and he would have continued killing. So who knows? As far as the 15-year-old accomplice, if anyone knows any additional information about who that was or what happened to him, please let me know. I cannot find much about whoever that was. So if you know anything, leave it in the comments, please. And we should talk about some other victims as well, or other possible victims, rather. So Bruce Howard Cramen was 6 years old on July 12th, 1960. Remember, this is in that 12-year gap where supposedly he wasn't killing anyone. And on July 12th, 1960, he went missing from Angeles National Forest. He was on a camping trip with the YMCA with about 80 other children. He was playing about 300 yards away from the main camp area with 2 other children when he went missing. Police do suspect Edwards in this case. However, that could be it. I've read some people think maybe he got lost and they just never found his body. That's a possibility, I think. However, I think when they were searching for him, unless he wandered really far away, they probably would have found his body. So, another child who is a possible victim is Thomas Bowman. He was 8 years old when he went missing on March 23rd, 1957. He was with some extended family on the Arroyo Cinco Canyon. I believe I said that right. And they were all walking back to the car they came in. He told them that he was going to run ahead and get to the car first. But when the rest of the family got to the car, he was nowhere to be found, and he was never seen again. A week after Thomas went missing, the family received a letter stating that he was alive and well and was being taken care for by a man. They couldn't find... nothing turned up over this. The letter that came in, there was nothing came from that ever. Also, another letter came into the same family basically stating that he was in Oklahoma. Again, nothing really came from that. He was never seen again. It's pretty interesting that story. I mean, so he was taken from the time that they were walking to the car. He went ahead. I guess it was far enough to where they couldn't see him. He was taken during that time because when the family got to the car, he wasn't there. So very, very small gap of time he was taken in. The next one we're going to talk about is Ramona Price. She was a 7-year-old girl who went missing September 21st, 1961. At the time that she went missing, the family was in the middle of moving. Ramona told her dad that she was going to walk from the old home to the new home, or possibly the other way around, because what I read was from the old home to the new home. It makes sense in my head. It would be the other way around, but maybe not. Either way, her father thought she was kidding, but when he was looking for her 30 minutes later, she was nowhere to be found and has never been seen again. Tracker dogs were able to catch her scent for about 2 miles, which had been heading towards 101 freeway, which was under construction at the time, right? Witnesses claimed to see Ramona getting into a faded blue Plymouth, which had been driven by a white man in his 30s or 40s. So Edwards would end up being convicted of 3 murders whose bodies were found. Now, this was Stella Nolan, found in the grave, Gary Roche, who was shot and killed in his home, and Donald Todd, whose body they found 2 days after he was killed. He confessed all 3 of these killings. He confessed to 3 other ones, but their bodies were never found. So he was basically convicted of those 3, Stella, Gary, and Donald Todd. Before his trial would commence, he would attempt suicide twice. Once by slashing his stomach open with a razor blade, and once by ODing from tranquilizers he was able to get somehow. Charged in 3 of his 6 confessed crimes, he was convicted and sentenced to die after telling the jury, "I want the chair. That's what I've always wanted." Immediate execution was his goal. As Edwards told the court, "My lawyer told me that there are 100 men waiting to die in the chair. I'm asking the judge if I can have the first man's place. He's sitting there sweating right now. I'm not sweating. I'm ready for it." That was a quote that he said. Basically, he wanted to die. Obviously he did. He tried to kill himself twice. He didn't want to live anymore. Who knows if, I bet there's a bunch of reasons why he didn't want to live anymore. I mean, part of it could be that he was guilty. I mean, but also all of his friends and family now know he was killing and sexually assaulting children. I mean, so I'm sure he didn't want to live anymore. And with that said, on October 30th, 1971, he cut the process short, using an electric cord to hang himself in his death row cell at San Quentin. So he was able to do it. He didn't want to live anymore. You know, yeah, who knows? And you know, it's interesting. Who knows what he was doing during that 12-year gap in between the murders and the kidnappings? You know, who knows? Who knows what he was doing? I seriously doubt he was doing nothing, though. I mean, you know, you do see that, you know, with like the BTK, he took huge gaps, but for one thing, it's pretty rare, and it just seems like he would have still been doing it. I mean, there were a bunch of children that went missing during that period in that area. Obviously, not all of them are going to be Mack Ray Edwards, but it just seems like more than likely he has something to do with some of them. So, you know, this is a shorter episode. I went kind of fast with it. You know, it's very cut and dry. I think it's interesting. It's interesting to read about, to know about. You know, he's one of those serial killers. It was one of the worst. And it's really sad because they were all children, you know. It's sad, you know, all of this sort of stuff is sad anyways. But whenever you have 8-year-old children being kidnapped, sexually molested, and killed, it makes it so much worse. And yeah, but I appreciate you sticking around and listening to this. Let me know what you think in the comments below about this just terrible case. Like I said, if you have any more information that I missed, let me know. I'm down for everything. I want to read everything that you guys have to say. Thank you for being here. Subscribe if you haven't already. Again, we have a Patreon account set up. The link to that will be in the description below again. And yeah, like I said, next week, me and Stefan are coming back 1 week from today. Today is Saturday, the 7th of November. I will be uploading it today. So next Saturday, we will have a very long, deep episode with me and Stefan going over Heaven's Gate. So thank you very much for listening to this. You have a good day.